Hey there, my name is Portia Lori. Welcome to or welcome back to my YouTube channel. And today I've got something very special and very weird for you. This idea kind of came from why I started my YouTube to begin with. I really started my YouTube channel just to have a space to talk about these movies and TV shows and musicians and anything pop culture related that was just weighing heavy on my mind. Part of that was also to talk about things that I don't feel like get nearly enough attention, nearly enough praise. So today's series that I'm going to be starting is called, and in the series, I plan to just cover little tiny shows, movies, indies, like stuff that's like more underground that doesn't have a huge following. Now, it doesn't mean that like they're like cool hipster. I just mean it's not nearly on the level of your Twilights and your Avengers and your Star Wars, but they still deserve to be recognized and maybe spread the word so that other people can go and enjoy these things as well. So to start this series off, I really wanted to start with a bang, and I wanted to start with a show that was so important to me. But today I wanted to talk about one of my favorite childhood TV shows that does not nearly get enough notoriety, and that's Disney's So Weird. Now, if you like hearing my opinions on all things pop culture, movies, music, TV shows, what have you, do me a solid and drop a like on this video, then run over to that subscribe button, hit the bell next to it so you can be notified every time I upload. Since this is a new series coming to my channel, please feel free to let me know in the comments what you guys think, if you have any suggestions. Also, I don't know if you guys ever noticed this, but I typically wear like pop culture-y t-shirts in my videos, like one, because it's kind of on brand, but mostly because I work an office job 9 to 5 during the week, so it's like I never get to wear my cool shirts. But today's shirt was definitely picked out with feet in mind. I feel like she would definitely have approved of this shirt. And last thing I just want to address before we get into the video is that I know that I've asked you guys for suggestions and I have definitely received quite a few. I really appreciate all of your feedback. It really helps me tremendously. But I do know that I haven't come through on most of the requests yet, and I just wanted you guys to know that that's not because I'm not interested in doing them. It's just most of the things that were suggested were things that I'm not super familiar with. And when it comes to like TV shows, especially ones that ran for more than like, I don't know, 3 seasons, it's gonna take me a little bit of time to create a video idea around it. So please be patient, hold on, I'm coming at you with those videos. I have also got a few requests about Boy Meets World. I feel like if you're on my channel right now, it's probably because one of my Boy Meets World videos was suggested to you and maybe you just stuck around. I appreciate that show so much. I had no idea when I was making that video, I think it was 2 years ago was the first one, that so many people would find it interesting or funny or want to add their 2 cents or have conversations in the comments about Boy Meets World. I kind of thought when I made that video that no one would see it and it would just be like a little sweet project that I did that was important to me because that show is important to me. But so many of you have reached out, so many of you have subscribed because of that. So thank you so much. I just wanted to say I will have more Boy Meets World content coming to the channel, but I'm going to make it over time. I don't want my entire channel to become the Boy Meets World YouTube. Don't think that my Boy Meets World stuff is done just yet. I think that's enough intro. Let's start talking about my favorite show, So Weird. So Weird was a tween paranormal sci-fi show straight out of the X-Files era that ran from January 18th, 1999 to September 28th, 2001 on the Disney Channel. The show follows Fiona Phillips, a girl obsessed with all things paranormal with a pretty abnormal life herself, living on a tour bus with her rock star mom and older brother Jack. In every episode, Fee attempts to solve strange mysteries and encounters she experiences, and on top of that, keeps an online journal recording these incidences, and also uses that to speak with other people who share her thoughts on everything so weird. Along for the ride is Molly's manager Irene, jack of all trades Ned, and intermittently sons Clue and Carrie. The show moves from city to city as Molly reignites her music career after the death of her late husband, bandmate, and the kid's father, Rick. So that's kind of a synopsis of the overall TV show. And in the show, we have Cara Deliza, who played Fiona Phillips, Patrick Levi, who played Jack Phillips, Mackenzie Phillips, who played Molly Phillips, Belinda Metz, who played Irene, Dave Squatch Ward, I don't know if I said it right, but he played Ned Bell, Eric Lively, who played Carrie Bell, Erik Von Detton, Disney Channel sweetheart, played Clue, and Alex Johnson, who came in as Annie, or as most of us in the fandom call her, Fee's weird replacement, in the final season. So one of the things that I really appreciated about this show is not only the paranormal and sci-fi factor, which if you couldn't tell by my shirt, I'm very much into paranormal and sci-fi. My mom was a huge sci-fi nerd. Like the Sci-Fi Channel was the channel that would just be constantly playing all the time. And so I grew up watching a lot of shows about like witchcraft and paranormal things and demons and things like that. But the thing about a lot of the shows that were really popular in the early 90s when I was a kid were just a little bit too intense, a little too scary really for me to watch all the time. But the thing that really got me into that genre was watching the show So Weird. Even shows like Goosebumps or Are You Afraid of the Dark at times would be not crossing the line as in they were inappropriate, but they were crossing the line in the fact that they scared the absolute bejesus out of me. This show was kind of right in the middle. Like there were elements of it that was really could be scary at times or frightening, but it never felt like it was overwhelming to me. Something that I think made So Weird stand out from other TV shows of that time is the format of how each episode played out. In each episode, we would see the crew moving from location to location as Molly's trying to reignite her music career. So we're constantly being in different areas, different states, we're constantly getting different vibes and meeting new people. And I think that that's something that you don't see in a lot of children's television, is that typically, you know, they're just in one house in one town and everything kind of happens around the like family. Whereas in this show, it was constantly moving, constantly changing. So it was a lot harder for me to get tired of the formatting of the show. With So Weird, I think with them moving from place to place, it's a little bit more fathomable that she would have all of these different paranormal experiences because she's constantly having just new life experiences every day. Now, the show didn't necessarily carry the same storyline from episode to episode, but there were storylines built into the season, and each episode would play into whatever we were trying to get to. But something I noticed is that a lot of the other shows that were airing on Disney Channel at the time didn't necessarily have season-long plots. They more were just like, here's what happened at school today, or here's the weird thing that happened over the weekend, or like my parents are going out of town for the night. In So Weird, there was genuinely a story that was happening that we were watching Fee slowly kind of chip away the pieces to find the truth that she was looking for. And that's kind of what the general theme, I think, of the entire show was, at least for Fee's portion of time that she's a part of the show. She's really trying to understand the death of her father, a man she never really got to know and has only gotten to know through pictures and other people's memories and music, of course. She feels extremely alone, and each episode we kind of get closer and closer to understanding exactly why he died, how he died, and how him and Fee are still connected. I think what's important too is that not everything is resolved at the end of every single episode. And that's pretty different than most other Disney shows. When I think of Disney Channel shows, I think of, you know, having a very silly small problem and having it resolved by the end of it. Whereas in So Weird, we would often have problems and sometimes they would never get solved or they just wouldn't turn out the way that we wish they had. And we'd have to watch the characters deal with the outcome of that. But then we get to season 3. Where we just take a hard left. Actually, I think they did a U-turn in season 3. So we went from this really darker subject matter in season 2 to whatever season 3 was. In season 3, we do see that Fee decides to take a break from her paranormal investigations to live a somewhat normal teen life. And so we get our replacement Fee, Annie. Again, we'll talk about her later. Let's talk about all the great stuff about So Weird first. So in season 1, we're obviously getting our introduction to all the characters. Fiona, our main character, our squad leader, Fiona Phillips, she's the GOAT. Investigating weird stuff. She's the GOAT of starting your own website. She is constantly on a mission to uncover everything paranormal and weird and prove that these things really exist. Then we have Jack, Fiona's older brother, and the resident naysayer. It's both annoying that they have to have a character that is just like the wet blanket and is constantly pooping on everything that's happening around them. At the same time, this person exists, you know? If you have a friend that believes in aliens, I guarantee you have another friend who vehemently doesn't. You know what the thing is I have a love-hate relationship with Jack. I love his character because he cares so much about his mom and really cares a lot about his sister. Like, this is a great like brother-sister chemistry relationship in the show. At the same time, like, his reasoning as for why things are never the way Fee sees them, like why they could never be that way, his reasoning is just like so dumb. Again, hate-love relationship with Jack. He's very important to the storyline, and something I really enjoy is that in season 2 we definitely see him being a little less guarded about the weird stuff, but we'll get into that. Molly is like the mom figure, obviously. Molly's trying to revive her music career. You can tell she's still trying to kind of be comfortable on stage on her own, try to like, you know, raise the kids on her own. She's still like learning how to do these things, and obviously still grieving the loss of her late husband. He wasn't just her husband, was her lover, her best friend, and also her music career like partner. I really enjoy how they portray her character. I feel like sometimes, especially in the early 90s, like single mom characters would always be shown as scatterbrained, or they'd be like kind of men obsessed and like constantly dating and neglectful. And I think Molly is actually a good balance, because we do see her date a little bit, but we also see that she's always around for all of the shenanigans that are going on. Yeah, she's a singer, and yeah, she's trying to revive her music career, but she's also a mom first, and they do a great job of depicting that. Besides Fee, Molly is probably my second favorite character on the show. Clue, who is played by Disney's sweetheart Erik Von Detton. I think it's so funny that in a Disney show, they still somehow manage to have a character in the squad that's like the stoner character. And I'm pretty sure So Weird came first, and then he was in that movie Brink. But like, I don't know, he could have played Brink and they were like, hey, could you do that character but on this show and like no rollerblades? Oh, I love Brink so much. Princess Diaries? Okay, I have to move on. The great thing about Clue's character is that he helps out Fee a lot in season 1. Like, you know, when Jack won't be around and he's refusing to really listen to Fee, Clue kind of steps in as like a fill-in extra brother, and I really enjoy his character. Now, his character kind of goes in and out of the show because he does end up going to college in the second season, which was due to Erik Von Detton in real life doing a lot more filming and a lot bigger projects that were going on outside of his Disney Channel stuff. But that's okay, because Clue is then replaced by Carrie. Before I tell you about the character of Carrie, I just have to say, because I didn't know until I started researching for this video, did you know Eric Lively is the older brother of Blake Lively? And now I'm just so jazzed about it. Growing up, biggest crush on Carrie. I thought he was, oh my God, he was my favorite character growing up, not because he adds anything to the storyline particularly. I just liked him because he's very attractive. Carrie actually comes in more in the second season, although I'm pretty sure he makes a couple of appearances in season 1, which is why I brought him up now. He has a pretty interesting storyline for season 2, but we'll get into that later. And lastly, Ned and Irene, who I don't feel like their characters are very well-rounded, to be honest. I think that they're just kind of filler characters. They're kind of utilized when they need them, you know? All of a sudden they have a backstory because this episode's gonna be about their childhood or something like that. But I don't think that, like the other characters, they're fully realized. And honestly, that's for the best, because I think there's enough storylines to follow in this show. You know, it's only 20 minutes an episode. We can only go so in depth with so many of the cast members before it's like overwhelming and hard to keep up with storylines. So I actually don't mind that Ned and Irene kind of just exist to be part of the story. Their characters are necessary, but their personalities are not. But season 1 is ultimately Fee really introducing us as the audience to her life, to living on the road, to seeing what that's like. And this quest for paranormal and stuff, I think, is genuine. I think she genuinely is interested in that. But above all, I think she's trying to find a connection with her father to find a way through this grief. As I was saying before, episode to episode, they didn't carry on necessarily like a specific storyline, but there were bigger stories that were then held on to. Like, they did a pretty good job with continuity, unlike shows like Boy Meets World, which, again, shameless promotion if you want to go check out those videos. But there's episodes like Angel, one of my absolute favorites, where the bus to crash and they end up having to stay at this house, a single father and a daughter, and Jack sees the daughter and it's like love at first sight. Fast forward, we find out that Angel actually has cancer. Saw in the middle of the road was actually her guardian angel. It turns out that Fee is actually the match for the bone marrow. She ends up giving her bone marrow to Angel, and Angel's able to actually, like, I guess, survive cancer. And this hangs on because Angel and Jack end up being in a relationship. I think she gives him like her guardian angel necklace that she was wearing the whole episode, and that's something that sticks with Jack. And they keep mentioning this all the way up until I think season 3. For all my fellow Oregonians, there is a Bigfoot or Sasquatch episode, which I find to be pretty fun to watch now that I live here, that I'm like, oh, like, I guess that is a thing, but like nobody cares about Sasquatch here. And what I think is everyone's favorite episode of season 1, Will of the Wisp. So this is an incredibly important episode because this is a topic that comes up over and over again in season 2. So in Will of the Wisp, basically what happens is a spirit possesses Jack's body, and unless Fee can come up with his one true name, he's going to permanently possess Jack's body, and Jack will forever be in, I guess, purgatory. I'm not really sure where Jack is during this time. With a little help of the internet, she's able to come up with his name, which is right here. Whatever his name is, throwing it on the screen. I don't remember how she says it. This episode is extremely important because of what is revealed to us through this spirit. First of all, we find out that this spirit is already very aware of Fee, already knows who she is and what she's been up to and what she's interested in, and the door that she's been trying to open to the other side. 2, we find out that not only is her opening this door making the other side notice her presence and feel a little uncomfortable about it, but we also find out that her father was interested in the exact same thing. So this is a really like big turning point episode because this is when we really start to delve into the darker side of what Fee's been researching. I would say for the most part, we've stayed pretty lighthearted and pretty on the surface. But with this episode, it really verifies that Fee really is opening a door. And it also verifies that not everything on the other side is okay with that, and that there could be consequences to what she's doing. This episode is probably the most important episode of season 1. Just a couple sidebars. My favorite episodes from season 1, Lost. That's my favorite episode of all time. If you were a child of the early 90s, I guarantee you watched something that had Kyla Pratt in it. When I think of Kyla Pratt, I often think of the Proud Family, who she did the voice for Penny Proud. But anyway, she was just such a big part of my childhood, and I love that she was in this episode. Not to mention Dionne Warwick, who is a very famous 70s singer, is also in that episode. And my other favorite episode would actually be Website, and this is because in this episode, this is the first time Fee receives communication directly from her father. She gets emailed this news article that's basically bashing Molly and saying what a terrible performance she's gonna have, but the thing is the performance hasn't happened yet, and then all of these things come true. The point of why I really enjoy this episode is because Fee figures out by the end of it that the person sending her all of this information, warning her about the future, is her dad. So I just like that because it gives you glimmers of hope going into the rest of the season. So now as we move into season 2, this is where we get a little darker, a little grittier, and this is my favorite season of the show. Granted, it's basically the last season of the show because I'm gonna keep saying it, season 3 is just a what season. So in season 2, we're taking a way more introspective, way more mature look at all of the things that go bump in the night with Fee. Very first episode of season 2, she goes to see a medium to talk about her father. Basically, the episode is about mediums who lie, and it's ultimately finding someone who can speak to the dead, who's been exposing people for being mediums. But what I think is most interesting about this episode is at the end of it, there's this conversation between Molly and Fee, and they really are just being super honest about how they're feeling with her father's passing. Just because she's 13, just because it happened 10 years ago, it doesn't mean that the feelings dwindle at all. And if anything, for Fee, and I think for Molly too, it's that they're almost getting more intense feelings because she's getting so close to him. And I think Molly's feeling more intense because she's afraid that maybe all this time on the road, maybe all this lack of normality is making Fee lose it. Molly never says like she believes in it for sure, but I think she's kind of half and half. So I think it's really interesting. It kind of establishes that their relationship, it maybe is going through a change right now. Not necessarily that they're not as close anymore, but also, you know, Molly's just fearful of what what's the impact of all of this going to be on Fee in the long run? So season 2, we also see the switch out of the Bell brothers. Clue gets accepted to UC Santa Cruz, actually, which I think is so great. I know I mentioned earlier that I live in Oregon, but I am from the Bay Area, I'm from California. Also, I think it's hilarious because a thing growing up in my town, I'm from San Jose, is that the word on the street, I don't know, I didn't go to college, don't come after me, I'm not making fun of anyone. I've heard that if you are 18 with a pulse, they will accept you into UC Santa Cruz. And so the fact that Clue goes to UC Santa Cruz, this like weird stoner character, also moving to like a super like laid back beach stoner town, like it totally makes sense. And I don't know if the writers like intended for that to just line up so perfectly. I mean, he could have gone to like, I don't know, Beach State from Boy Meets World or something. But the fact that he went to UC Santa Cruz, just hilarious. But it's a great school. Go banana slugs. Something else that I think was cool about the switch out of Clue to Carrie is that Carrie kind of came into the show with his own set of drama. The reason that Carrie joins them on tour is actually because Carrie drops out of college and he's afraid to tell his mom. So for like at least 2, maybe 3 episodes, that's like a storyline that's kind of carried on in the background. But I kind of like how that plays out over time, and I like how eventually Irene caves and really lets Carrie be who Carrie's supposed to be. He kind of replaces Clue in the sense of like tagging along with Fee on her adventures when Jack isn't willing to be a part of it. Carrie isn't quite as impressionable as Clue. Clue for sure kind of went along with everything Fee said, but with Carrie, he's way more like Jack in the sense that like it's gonna take a lot for him to believe the unbelievable, but it's not completely out of his wheelhouse. In season 2, we do utilize Ned's character quite a bit more with there's the mutiny episode where he gets like a piece of an old boat that like essentially possesses him and makes him feel like he's the captain of that boat. He becomes like a different human. And then there's another episode that's kind of like Stand By Me, and it's essentially that Ned and his friends when he was a kid went out to this place where they used to jump off of like this wooden bridge thing. But one time him and his friends went there and one of them actually died from falling into the water. The water was too shallow and so he ended up passing away. Really interesting episode, but it totally is a ripoff of Stand By Me. And I want to say Irene gets, I think, yeah. So Irene does get a little sub storyline too with the episode where they visit her sister and her nephew's having nightmares, and then Jack actually helps Irene's nephew defeat the monsters in the nightmares because he starts having the nightmares too. Season 2 is kind of like where Jack starts to shine a little bit more. He does get himself into a few situations where ultimately he has to save the day, and it doesn't really matter whether or not he's believing in what's going on, it's that he has to do what's right for his family. So I think that's kind of fun and different. It stretches his character out and he's a little less of a wet blanket. He's still the wettest of the blankets, but slightly less damp. And one of my favorite episodes ever, it's a big emotional turning point for Fee. In the episode Strange Geometry, Molly confesses that Fee's father, Rick, was actually into all the same weird and paranormal stuff that she was. Possibly his interest in the occult, in paranormal, is what ultimately led to his death. And that's why Molly is so apprehensive about how passionate Fee is about all of this weird stuff. Not only is it playing into fears that I'm sure she's built up around Rick's death, it probably makes her miss Rick a lot more. Parents who have a kid with their significant other and then their significant other passes away, sometimes they will take out their resentment of the situation on the kid because the kid reminds them so much of who they've lost. I kind of feel like Fee's interest in the paranormal makes Molly feel like that. Like, I really want to let Rick go. You remind me of him so much that it's almost too much. She even says, I think in like one of the final episodes of season 2, I have to finish what Daddy started. It really shows what her real mission is. It's to find her father, to talk to him at least once. And like I said earlier, the spirit that inhabited Jack's body, here it is again, the name, he shows his lovely little face again by inhabiting Molly's body. The friggin' Irish accents that they have to do when like they're being possessed are just...
Once I lured Fergus, the glassblower, to a watery doom in the swamps and made the villagers think 'twas his wife done him in. How I miss making me dear ma laugh.
It's so bad. Anyway, the Will-O-the-Wisp comes back inhabits Molly's body and basically gets in the way of Fee being able to talk to the fireman that actually pulled her father out of the car, which is wild. Isn't that a wild thing to think of, to like be able to meet that person? Essentially, the Will-O-the-Wisp tries to like stop this from happening, which makes you wonder what's the reasoning behind that? What are you trying to hide or cover up? Breakru almost goes as far as murdering both Molly and Fee too in this giant firing inferno at the end of the episode. Like I said, season 2, it was like a Degrassi season, okay? It freaking went there. I think it's safe to say that this is probably like my favorite episode of the season because there's so many important things happen in this episode, but it would be twin, that Rick was actually a twin. They had this twin language that they used growing up. When Fee comes into town to visit, they kind of start communicating again by, I think he's having her write things in her sleep and then translating it. Ultimately, I really enjoy this episode because it kind of gives a little bit of closure right before Fee ends up exiting the show. It's battling like this weird like creature thing. It's like a blob. It's faceless, but she's battling this thing and her dad actually comes out of nowhere and no one can see him but her, but he ends up saving her, saying like, hey, I see you, I watch over you, I protect you, but the other side is also looking at you and they don't like what they're seeing. It validates everything Molly was saying, that Rick was looking into this stuff and part of his death did have to do with his interest in the paranormal and uncovering more of it. It's actually found out in season 2 that Rick didn't die in the car accident. He was actually dead before the car accident even happened. Now, I do have a few favorite episodes from this season, and I decided to only include 3 of them because, like I said, season 2 is my season. So my first favorite episode of season 2 would definitely be Siren, where we see another side of mermaids. Watching this episode, and it changed my mind, and it made me think like, oh, there's like different versions of what people think mermaids are supposed to be. And sirens essentially are supposed to be mermaids, but they're evil, and they would lure fishermen into the sea and then eat them, I assume. I really enjoyed the episode Sirens because it was like an interesting, different look at mermaids, but I was really obsessed with another short-lived, small Disney Channel show called Flash Forward. Again, like So Weird, this is a show where I'm pretty sure I was the only person ever watching it. I haven't seen it since I was a kid, and at this point, I don't remember anything about it except the name of it and the fact that Jewel State and Ben Foster were in it. But she was in this episode of So Weird, and so for a long time, this was like my absolute favorite episode. And I also have to mention, like, you might also know Jewel State because she was in that show Firefly that has become like a very large cult classic. And then I love the episode Second Generation because this is the first time that we see Fee kind of have like a love interest. She meets a boy who contacts her because he's trying to learn more about his dead mom, which of course hits a strong note with Fee. Ultimately, she finds out that this boy is actually a clone, but it works out because they're totally into each other and they totally kiss. But you know what the absolute best piece of information about this episode? The kid that she falls in love with is the same kid from Air Bud. I was very excited when I found this out. I just thought this was like probably the funnest of the fun facts I could possibly include. His name is Kevin Zegers, by the way. He's done a ton of stuff. Honestly, the only other thing I know him from besides this episode of So Weird and Air Bud is like he did a Rock Mafia music video with Miley Cyrus. Anybody remember that video? But you can find him in a ton of stuff. And finally, my favorite episode from season 2 is the blues episode. And this one I just wanted to include because the storyline of this episode is so good. The tour stops at this old blues club in New Orleans and the owner is trying to revamp it. So that's why she's booking Molly, but Molly gets inspired by being in the building and all of a sudden she starts singing and writing this song that she swears she's never heard before. But then slowly over time, Carrie starts playing it on the guitar and then Ned picks up the harmonica and he knows it. And then as weird as it can get, Fee starts singing. And it's the only time that we see her actually like singing on the show. This is kind of a cool setting to do because it's already a show that's kind of about a musician. And so I like the idea of doing this storyline about a musician whose music was stolen from them. So now we've arrived. Season 3, y'all. Or as I like to tenderly call it, the what the actual fuck season. At the beginning of season 3, I think Fee has one more interaction with the Will-O-the-Wisp, warning her about what's to come, about the other side being upset with her. And so she ends up asking her mom if it's okay if she moves in with her aunt for a little while, just to like stay in one place for a while, just to like be normal and to stop putting everyone in so much danger from her point of view. But the way she sells it to Molly is basically that she doesn't want to make her feel anxious about her love for paranormal anymore. So it might be good to just take a little bit of a break. The real actress Cara Deliza wanted to do other things. That's why she ended up leaving the show in the last season. And I actually think that the way that they wrote Fee out is nice. It's not what I wanted, but like they were gonna lose Fee regardless. So their options probably were to like cancel the show as a whole or just replace her with somebody else. So I understand why the switch had to happen. I'm not really that mad about that. Although I do think in retrospect, they should have just made like a cliffhanger last episode and then a Disney Channel movie and then just had a wrap, but I digress. The thing that bothers me is that Fee left to have normalcy. It's the phrasing she utilizes. But then they stay in their hometown and go to high school there. The whole point is that she wanted to stay in one place. And yes, they do go from like to a few different tour stops, like in season 3 at some point. But for the most part, they're just going to their regular high school, living in the same old house, doing the same shit every day. Anyway, we get replacement Fee, Annie. Meet Annie, a very convenient family friend that just so happens to like music and also like weird paranormal stuff. And you know what the thing is that I don't actually hate the character Annie. I think Alex Johnson is a very talented actress. I would later go on to watch her be in shows like Instant Star, later on in Final Destination 4? 3? I don't know, one of the Final Destination was. She's the one that gets the nails through her head. Epic death scene, by the way. Anyway, I don't believe it's Annie's fault. It's not really that Annie was the person I had a problem with. It's just that the writing for this last season was like, it's like they made a paranormal show, but for like an even younger audience. They're just not good episodes. Like they're not well written. Everyone's lost their depth. I'm sorry, but I hate season 3. And I'm not sorry about it, because you know what? Everything I looked up, every Tumblr page I read, every comment, people don't like this season. So I know I'm not alone in this. I just don't want it. I feel like they always blame like whoever's the new face of the show, but I genuinely don't think it's her fault. I don't think her acting was bad. I think it was what was being written for her to act that was bad. Not to mention like the thing with her and like this panther that follows her around and that's like her protector, kind of like Fee had her dad. I just can't get down. I couldn't bring myself to watch season 3. I would put on episodes and they would play in the background and I would forget that they were on and I wouldn't be paying attention. I just couldn't torture myself by watching this season. Like, I'm trying to give you guys as much information about this show that nobody watches as possible, and then I'm like, oh, but like not the last season. How I Met Your Mother fans can relate. Now, the favorite episode is absolutely because it's so terrible that it's like kind of good. So there's the episode Detention, which I feel like gets brought up a lot. I think that's a lot of people's like favorite episode because it is pretty goofy and silly. Molly is going back to her high school and they're opening this old time capsule back from when she was a senior. They announced that she had this like watch inside the capsule. She's like, I never put anything in the capsule. She runs into another old classmate and he also has one of these really strange, weird, ugly watches. Annie decides to steal the watches that they end up throwing away and gives one to Jack and keeps one for herself. They get pushed into the past, into this weird like detention room thing, paranormal thing because of the watches. You know what? I'm describing too much of this episode. It doesn't matter. Jack says Annie's name 13 times in this episode. Okay, so we've kind of taken a look at some favorite episodes, season arcs, the overall episode formatting. I'm gonna break down what I think really worked about the show and maybe some things that didn't really work out that well. So as I kept saying throughout the video, I think something that really worked for So Weird was that they weren't afraid to delve deep with emotions. Our main cast is a family that's dealing with loss, and even though it's been a long time since they've lost this person, it never leaves leaves their mind. So it's a constant thing that we're always working through. And I think it shows it in a light that's not necessarily just like, yeah, they lost their dad, but they're doing fine now. And like, not everything's fixed at the end. Sometimes you're just sad and it's okay to be sad. They learn how to kind of just cope together. Unlike shows like Boy Meets World that I've covered, or even Sex and the City, I actually think that the continuity on this show is pretty damn good. Like, they do a pretty good job of recalling different events that happen in other episodes. They're pretty good at bringing back reoccurring characters, reoccurring situations, and they do it in a new light every time, so it doesn't feel super repetitive. Again, this show's only 3 seasons long, so I mean, it didn't really get a chance to show its true colors. I think if this show had been able to run for like 5 to 6 seasons, like this would have been a killer show. Fee's fashion in this show, hello. It's so funny to look back at shows like this, and even I was thinking about that in my last video about the next Karate Kid, is like the fashion that they're wearing. Like 5 years ago, I would have been like, ooh, that's not a cute outfit. But now I'm like, oh, like I could literally buy that at Target tomorrow. I just have to say, like, Fee's fashion, her hairstyles, the crimping, even Molly, like she really knew how to dress too. So I just loved all the fashion of like late 90s, early 2000s. And now that that's all coming back, like you could just watch the show just for outfit inspo. And lastly, the thing that worked the most that I haven't actually talked about up until this point, the music. Yo, the music in So Weird was so good. It's so good. I was never a fan of Annie's character, right? But like her music isn't that bad either. I really enjoyed her singing on the show. I actually think like for them bringing in a replacement Fee, it was good that they added the musical element of it because it did make her a little bit easier to relate to her or to at least be interested in her character, because I at least was like, okay, she's like a talented artist, so I could understand why her and Molly might get along. My personal favorite songs were always She Sells and More Like a River. One thing that Disney didn't do for us, they never put all of the music onto like a CD compilation, and I'm sure you can find a lot of the music on YouTube or whatever, but like, hey Disney, can we get an album? Like, can I get a soundtrack? I would buy that today. If you put out a So Weird soundtrack, I would be the first one in line. Just throwing it out there. Now, a few things that I don't think worked quite as well on the show and could definitely be the reason why they never tried to reboot this at all. I mean, the special effects, it was 99 to 2001, guys, okay? So we're gonna give it a little bit of leeway. There were no good special effects going on at that time, but the special effects in this show were like extra bad. Yeah, they need a lot of work. By the big cloud monster thing that she's fighting in season 2, we've definitely improved to like Matrix level of CGI. I mean, that definitely didn't hold up that great over time. As I've said before, the last season is damn near unwatchable. As I'm suggesting this to you, I'm telling you, just watch seasons 1 and 2 and the first episode of season 3 so that you can let Fee go and have your closure and then forget about the show. But no disrespect to Alex Johnson, like I think a lot of people want to blame her like she killed the show. No. The writers killed the show. Alex Johnson, you should check her out on other things. If you haven't ever before, like go watch Instant Star. Now, before I get out of here, I did think of a couple ways that I think Disney could bring back So Weird. So my first thought is that if they were gonna keep the original cast, this is how I could see them continuing the storyline. I think that Molly would still be making music, but I think she wouldn't be necessarily striving for a record label deal anymore. I think she'd be making independent music or be producing. So I think she'd be doing a lot more stuff like on her own. Fee would probably be working with her mom in more of the social media and marketing aspect of it. I definitely think she would be the one to like help her book events, and I think she would run her social media accounts and things like that. But I also think Fee would still be doing her website. And I think at this point, with the rise of social media and things like YouTube, I think that she would have either started a YouTube channel or just gone really big with her blog, and she would have just blown up and had kind of like a cult-like following. I think she probably would have started like learning more about different aspects of paranormal. Maybe she would have gotten into like tarot or like fortune telling. I think she would have found a way to keep doing the weird stuff that she was really into. And then with everybody else, like Ned, Irene, Clue, Carrie, I imagine that they could stop by from time to time for like really good nostalgia-fueled episodes. but mostly it would be about the core family. Oh, and Jack, I almost forgot Jack. I think Jack's storyline would be the most interesting because I think he would be on the business end, or like the accounting side of the family business. I think he would also be working for his mom with her whole music career. And I think to mirror Molly's story, what would be super interesting is if Jack also became a single father. So like he had some kind of situation, whether he's either divorced or widowed. It would be interesting to kind of see the other side of Molly's situation with Jack. I think that that's how they would do it, like a mirror image of it. So that's idea number one. Idea number two, I think would be more likely if they were going to bring this show back, although I don't think Disney has any interest in reviving this show whatsoever. But if they did, the other version of it would be just a complete reboot. So we'd have a more ethnic family unit, you know, same kind of dynamic with like either a single mom or dad, and like the kid would probably be more closer to being like maybe non-binary, or just a different, not just necessarily a girl being the main character again. I think that they would do it completely differently. And I think that the storylines would then have to delve into more mainstream stuff. So like social media issues, probably soft true crime, because that's become such a large community in the last few years. Maybe more stuff with like entertainment and like the kind of seedy underbelly of Hollywood. I think that's another way that they could come at the show from a completely new and different perspective. But those are my ideas. So let me know down in the comments if you guys have any ideas of how you would bring back this show. So that's pretty much all I got for you today. I just wanted to tell you about this show that I really enjoyed watching as a kid, and maybe this will make you want to go check it out. As I always say, I am not a Disney sponsor. I am merely just a very big fan. But you can go watch So Weird all you want on Disney+. I'd love to delve deeper into individual episodes or characters. So if you enjoyed listening to my opinion about So Weird, do me a solid and get in those comments. Let me know what you think. Make sure you hit that like button too while you're down there. I have a lot of new stuff coming up. I know I always say that, but I have been feeling super creative lately, so I'm definitely gonna have some new things coming at you real soon. Do me a favor and go check out all my social medias. They are always linked in the description down below. If you enjoyed this video, please do me a solid and drop a like on it. Run over to that subscribe button and hit the bell next to it so you can be notified every time I upload. I had a lot of fun talking about So Weird. I really hope to do this again. If there are any other paranormal specific things you would like me to delve into, TV shows, movies, whatever, let me know down in the comments. And until next time, I'll catch you guys later. Bye.